All right. Good evening, chocolate people. Welcome to the Chocolate Life. I am your host, Mr. Chocolate. And once again, we have our resident co host, Coach K. And we got a good show for you tonight entitled Propaganda, Pulpit Pimps, and Political Prostitutes. Yes, ready to get into it.
Good evening, Chocolate Life. Uh, I'm happy to be here with you guys tonight. We thank you for all that you continue to do toward the goal of getting us to the point where we have an audience where we can actually engage each other a little bit more, where you send questions to us and we can hopefully try to answer them. And the whole goal is how do we build a community where um, we can start helping each other to be more aware on how to address the global melanated community, because as I continue to see news around the world, I'm seeing that young people are asking for elders to help. And it's saddening that there are not enough elders to help young people to grasp the severity that they're working with. And they're in the streets. I'm looking at that. They're in the streets. They want the knowledge, they want the information. So, what I'm going to do is just try to do my part and give you guys as much information as I can. Hopefully, you continue to pass it on. And as long as I have breath in my body, I'm going to try to help educate you guys so you can be empowered to take this planet to the next level of greatness, because we have not been there in about 5,000 years. How about that? The planet has been actually stagnated. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to let Mr. Chocolate just give us some of you guys may understand what this subject matter is about from your own definition, but I want him to give definitions, and then after which, I want him to give a few people that I may mention, and I may not go into a lot of details, but I'm hoping you guys just take notes, go back and replay the podcast, and start looking up some of these people and some of these events that we're talking about. Because as we've continued to state, an hour is not a whole lot of time for us uh, to address the severity of the subject matters that we encounter on a weekly basis. But it's important that we let you guys know, wherever you are around the world, that we we're trying to make this a global community, not just a community for the United States, not just a community for the Americas, because we live in the Americas. I'm hoping you guys can start envisioning that when this idea of the transatlantic slavery that moved from the other side of the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, and it just became transatlantic. It was the Indian Ocean along with the transatlantic, and then it became just a transatlantic. However, we focus a lot, because that's how we've been taught, and that's what we're going to go over, how propaganda has indoctrinated all of us. So it's not like we have a corner of the market on this information. We're learning it, and we just want to help you guys so we can learn all together. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Mr. Chocolate so he can just give us a few definitions of what we are talking about when we say propaganda, pulpit pimps, and political prostitutes, because they're real. So,
All right. Propaganda. Now, the second and third definitions are the one that's applying to the subject. The spreading of ideas, information, or the rumors for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or a person. That's definition number two. Definition number three. Ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to do damage to an opposing cause. That's
If you
propaganda.
if you would read number three again.
Ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause.
Thank you.
hmm hmm All right, and the next definition is pimp. All right, we got. Okay, so we got two definitions. First definition: a criminal who is associated usually with I'm sorry. A criminal who is associated with usually exerts control over and lives off of the earnings of one or more prostitutes. This is the verb to make use of often dishonorable to make use of often dishonorably for one's own gain or benefit. Second definition, the informal, to customize and adorn
Read that
something
first
such as
definition. I'm sorry, if you would read the first definition again, because that's the one. It's more in line with what we're talking about tonight.
okay, a criminal who is associated with usually exerts control over and lives off the earnings of one or more prostitutes. Okay, and prostitute. Okay. Oh, wow. I think all three definitions. Okay. First definition: to offer for sexual intercourse in exchange for pay. The second: to devote to corrupt or unworthy purposes or to debase. As an adjective, devoted to corrupt purposes. All right, the noun: a person who is engages in sexual intercourse in exchange for pay. A person who deliberately debases his or her talents.
Okay, put a pin in that, because what I'm hoping that we get to see is just to home in, not just on one definition, but chose for yourself wherever you are in this world, which one fit the place you are. So, if you would continue.
Actually, those were it. Those were the definitions for all three words.
Now, what? Okay, well, I appreciate that, but what I want you to do at this point, well, let me just hit on those for a moment, and then we're going. If you could, I'm going to let you come back and just give some names, because I want our audience to just pay attention to those three definitions, because we see the two entities, those pimps from the pulpit. And you probably don't, audience, if you're not associating pimping with the pulpit, then I'm going to help you a little bit. And I'm not being facetious when I say this. And the reason I say pulpit pimps because I listened to a Nigerian author about 3 weeks ago. She's a famous author. I can't even pronounce her name. I know it starts with a C. She went to school in the United States. It's like Chimamanda. I'm butchering her name. I'm sure some of you guys who may be familiar with this young woman, you know who she is. But she is an author um, who went to school in the United States. And a few weeks ago, she was taught. She was addressing an audience in Nigeria, and she talked about how the clergy uh, are corrupt. And like I said, she boldly stated it. But her backstory, the reason she talked about that, because she said too many of these, too many pulpit pimps are living asking for money, and they're running people away from the church, which is true, not just in Nigeria, but also around the world. But what was more pointed about the information that she gave was how whoever she made the statement um, to, it arose when she went to a funeral. And you guys can listen to it and you can get a better understanding than what I'm giving, because I'm just trying to give the highlights. The story to what she was talking about is when she made reference to that, I think a relative of hers died afterwards. Okay, and when people die, you go to the funeral, and instead of the pastor being a comforter, because that's what pastors supposed to do, but when you are a pimp in the pulpit, you take a person's or family's grief and you destroy them with it. I mean, that's I've seen that. And her statement was kind of hard to hear, but I know what she was saying has happened to a number of people, because the statement was why. Now, she made the statement, not her entire family. So if they had a problem with her, it would have been better if they had that conversation with her. But instead of having that conversation with her, remember now, these are pastors. This person is a pastor. So therefore, they should be seasoned enough to take criticism on what this person was saying. I think it's a slogan, hurt dogs will holler. Well, I think that's what happened, because this person was sitting in a funeral with her entire family on the front row. And instead of the pastor comforting the family whose loved one died, they referenced the statement that this person had made, I guess maybe a week or a month or whatever time earlier. And they reference it to say that, well, maybe that's why the person's family member died. Now, last time I checked, when I went to seminary, that is not what we're supposed to do. But this is one of the reasons that young people have no respect for the pulpit, because the pulpit has become a place of pimping the parishioners. Now, not saying that about every preacher, but my point about the the pulpit pimps is, and I'm going to use Billy Graham. Billy Graham was the pastor to Richard Nixon. Billy Graham, and many people in the United States idolized Billy Graham until he died. Okay, Billy Graham changed his whole uh, platform, using the words that you use now. He changed his whole platform after Richard Nixon went to jail. He was on that kick. God will save you. Gonna go to hell. All of that, that was his thing up until Nixon went to jail for uh, the Watergate
What?
scandal. And then he went over to, I think, Europe or Asia. You can look the story up. He changed the whole thing and said maybe people are not gonna go to hell if everybody don't believe in Jesus. And I want you to put a pin in that statement, because either the whole Bible that people throw down young people throat is true, or none of it is true. Now, that does not mean that our story has not been hijacked and put in the Bible, but the way it has been disseminated has been a lie. And it's been a lie by the people who came out of Europe. Because if you're going to talk about Christianity, and I didn't say Jesus, I said Christianity, then perhaps, audience, and I'm talking to you, you may want to go back and read a book that teach you about Christianity before there was a Christ. Because there were 16 crucified Christs, according to this book, before Europeans introduced the concept of Jesus. So if nothing else, it is important to learn that, and then you will see how people who consider themselves white nationalists are turning that whole idea of separation of church and state on its head now. So that's why I say pulpit pimps, because what they do, they make sure they continue to get resources, and they don't mind by being corrupt. The pulpit has always been corrupt since the days of Ptolemy. Okay? Ptolemy is before the days of the Roman government. So we're talking about a long distance. And why am I saying that? I'm going to tie all of this together when we start talking about some of these personalities. Now, the prostitution, I'm going to them and then I'll come back to the propaganda. The prostitution, political prostitution, okay? Which means that these people are willing. I didn't say slavery, and I did not say human trafficking, because human trafficking is usually somebody's being forced into selling themselves or whatever, they becomes a product. Prostitutions, people do this willingly. They decide they want to do it and they do it. And we see so many political, I want to say prostitutions because they're getting paid. I hate to think that Black people, for political relevance, they're going to give themselves a group of people. I'm hoping we're not. I'm just trying to put this information out here so we can understand what's happening. That we're not, as a group, going to give any other group the power of what they call the vote, and you get nothing for it. This is supposed to be reciprocity in this voting process. This is not supposed to be Stockholm Syndrome, and it's not supposed to be a pimp pimping the other people. Okay, I'm trying to keep this clean and not use certain words. That is not what we're supposed to be doing as a group. But we see politicians do it all the time because they get paid. But if you don't get paid and you continue to give everything away, then you're not even a prostitute. Now, for all of you young people that may be in the teenage range, like I said, I'm trying to keep it clean. But a 304, how about that? We don't need to be 304s as a group, because Politicians, doesn't matter if they're Republicans, doesn't matter if they're Democrats, they're selling themselves to the elites who run this country and the world. That is what politicians have always done, and really that is what the pulpits have always done. If since the days of Ptolemy. That's why I say find that book, Google it, find it, 16 Crucified Christ. Okay? Find that book, and then there's another book for you to actually do some research for yourself. Colonization and Christianity. Because if you put those two books together, I believe you will actually start finding some of those jewels that we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we started talking about Hinduism, Buddhism, the idea of Judaism, the idea of Islam, the idea of Christianity. You will start making some connections for yourself. Whatever tradition you come out of, my hope is that you completely come out of it and you start looking within and stop devoting everything to these concepts that somebody else is using a whole swath of people to keep them hypnotized, keep them traumatized, keep them indoctrinated, keep them uh, just doing the same thing the same way. And that's called insanity. But they do it so well because they've mastered the art of propaganda. And Mr. Chocolate told us propaganda is using information very, read that definition again, using the information to control, okay? To control over their lives. And that's what has been masterfully done by the elites of the world. But as we can see, young people are not buying it in Bangladesh. They're not buying it on the continent. They're not buying it in South America. They're not buying it here in the United States. And we're going to see a lot of shifting gears because people have lied to us so long, they just think we're going to just fall for it because they're running game on each other. And we see games being run because we are in an election year. So we see games being ran. We see games being ran by the politicians that call themselves Republicans. We see games being ran by people call themselves Democrats. What we don't see a lot is people who are not not associated with either one of those parties, but they're out there doing work to actually help young people to move to another level of being politically engaged. And those are called independents. Okay. You never see those on the big media stages. So it's up to you guys, wherever you are in the United States or around the world. Bangladesh, they're asking their prime minister to resign. Okay. She's a female, but she's not doing anything for the people in the country. All of these are melanated people. And in the United States, they're fighting over Kamala Harris's quote unquote her blackness. No, Kamala Harris is not a black woman. That's propaganda. According to her records, according to her ethnicity, quote unquote, and race are terms that were created by white supremacy. So to get caught up in that is foolish. Kamala Harris, just like her father, comes from Hindu and people who come from other ethnicities. She's not going to say that because she's been cosplaying forever. Same way with Barack Obama, he was cosplaying. But at this point, we see South people, and I'm going to bring this back around when I talk about the rest of the people that we talked about last week. J.D. Vance's wife, Usha, um, Vivek Ramaswamy, all of these people, if you look up a law back in the early 1900s, you will see that the United States gave Hindu, very brown people, just like the Bangladesh people. Bangladesh make a lot of apparel for the people in the United States, so much so that one year some people got burned up in a factory. And now young people want jobs. They want the same thing the Kenyans want. They want the same thing the Nigerians want. Although Nigeria is a rich country, the people who are getting, they are tired of the taxes going up, and they're tired of not having a decent cost of living. They just like black people in the United States. Imagine that. These people who got very brown skin, Bangladesh, they're not called black people, but they're just as black as we are. But since we are a flat black, which that takes into account what you would call ethnicity, national origin, all of those things. And at this point, they're even trying to raise our Indianness. You know, what the Europeans found when they first got here, the Indians. Some of our people are what you would call Indians, the original melanated people on this continent. Not this, yeah, this continent. And when I say this continent, I mean the North and the South before it became North America, South America, and Central America. All of this was the America. All of it was brown people. It didn't have any of these other people until they became slaves. White slaves, black slaves. White slaves got more freedom, got a chance to start being associated with the ruling class, and now this is where we are. So anybody listening to Kamala Harris's story, you will learn that her father said he's Irish and he is Hindu. Pay attention to that. He said Hindu, which is a part of their culture. Although his mom was very, very dark, he said he was Hindu or Hindi, whichever way it's supposed to go. Meaning that, yes, he come from brown people, but in his national and political identity, he's still a white man. So how do you get a black woman from a white man? And her mom is a Hindu also. That's a mute point. But for us to try to associate and be a part of something that's not us, we're still buying into propaganda. That's the only thing I'm trying to get us to see. How propaganda is still running too many black people because they're trying to associate with something that's not them. So we're still getting our minds messed up instead of freeing ourselves. Um, what I want, because I want to talk about how they pander, but I want to talk about how not only politicians pander, but how we see pandering from a lot of different people that we're supposed to be trusting or listening to or looking at, and they keep recycling the same words. So, with that, I want Mr. Chocolate just to give us a few names, and then I'm going to tie them into the very thing we're talking about here.
All right. The first name, Tim Scott. Clarence Thomas. Vivek Ramaswamy. Nikki Haley. Usha Vance. JD Vance. Kamala Harris. Barack Obama. Donald Trump. Joe Biden. Amber Rose. Candace Owen. Meg the Stallion. Drake. Kendrick Lamar. Jesse Owens. Simone Biles. Castor Semenya. Che Guevara, Thomas Sankofa, Ibrahim Traore, and those are the names.
Uh, I'm going to add Jill Stein, Sonia Massey, and Kanye West. So, you guys listening to those, if you don't know who these people are, I'm going to try to go through them just a little bit, not to give you their whole backstory, because my hope is that you try to find out who are these people and why are we giving you these people names. I'll tie a few of them together. First of all, Tim Scott and Kamala Harris have been spreading propaganda for 2.5 years, and their famous statement is the United States, no, America is not a racist country. Now, Tim Scott, and I think we've mentioned this before, but Tim Scott is a Republican. Kamala Harris is a Democrat. Tim Scott came from um, the Carolinas somewhere, but so did Clarence Thomas. And if you look at these people, you may want to think, well, they supposed to be one group or the other. We're not a homogeneous group by no means. We are a blended group. We've always been a blended group because melanated people do not have a problem with bringing people into the family because we see ourselves as the family on the earth. We have become alienated when we decide we don't want to be a part of the family. I don't care if your skin is pale skin pink or if it's chocolate brown or deep chocolate brown or even blue black. Melanated people understood that we were one family before people started coming out the caves. When people started coming out the caves, who had been living in caves to survive, and the melanin started depleting because a lot of things happened. But like I said, that's a subject for another day. Right now, how we're looking at each other is getting to be most distorted because we're listening to people who they're panderers, they're professional panderers. Tim Scott is a professional panderer. Uh, Clarence Thomas is bought and paid for, although he's on the white supremacy court. He has no interest in justice. Vivek Ramaswamy, darker than probably most of us who are listening to this podcast, but at the same time, he has no love for anybody who was here in this country long before his parents, because his parents was first generation, not him. But he has an attitude on people who come from the Brahmin class in India considered themselves to be just like the monarch over in England. That attitude, and that attitude is a spiritual problem. So I'm trying to get us to see the magnitude of the spiritual concepts that we are actually we have to pull back some of the layers because there's no difference between Kamala, Vivek, Usha, uh, and let's go a little bit farther, Candace Owens or Amber Rose. Amber Rose, uh, she's been on so many different shows saying she don't identify as black, but now somehow she becomes black. Candace Owens can always find a way to denigrate black people while at the same time saying, I've been black my whole life. Well, what do you mean when you say black? That's what you guys have to start asking people. Because black has never been, quote unquote, just the melanin on the outside of a person's body. As you can see right now, they're having a hard line discussion on Kamala Harris and giving her something that she never deserved, nor does she even Only thing she wants is to pander, and she is pandering just like Donald Trump. That's what I want us to see. Although people can despise Donald Trump and call him, say, I saw a a podcast before we came on that was saying that he treated his audience that was in Georgia like he was a pimp. Well, what's the difference in him treating people like a pimp and Barack Obama treating the whole collective like a pimp? Barack Obama going to Howard and Morehouse, quote unquote, chastising adults because these are seniors in college, so therefore they're adults. But everybody seems to think they can do that to the group that they call black, while at the same time they want the benefits of being black while not being black. Kamala Harris had the audacity to talk to Taraji P. Henson using Kendrick Lamar's song, Not Like Us. But at the same time, Kendrick Lamar is not the person she brought up on stage to help her do a campaign, uh, whatever, rally. She brought Meg Thee Stallion. Not knocking Meg. Meg is an artist. Meg do what Meg does because that's what artists do. However, Meg came on stage with a nice suit on, something you don't see her in on her shows. Meg like to have her body parts out. But Meg is not the problem here. Meg is the carrot that Kamala Harris is pushing. Since everybody is trying to use Kendrick Lamar's song, why is it she had no men on the stage? And then secondly, why is it that the black uh, reporters, journalists, black journalists, had no black men on the stage? But that's a subject for another day. It seemed that everybody can try to use black people and they think they can actually manipulate black women's easier than black men because black men are more stern in their view. But black men love black women. And if they love any other women, that's fine too. We're not talking about individual people who they sleep with. We're talking about a whole collective. And far too often, we allow other people outside of the community to try to tell us how to be a collective or how to be a unit. We must start doing that better for ourselves. And I will continue to say I commend the young people around the world who are saying they're not going to take it anymore from their governments. They're tired. They can't be the people of the future when all of these old fossils are trying to hold on to money and power. That's what's happening in the United States, and it's falling apart. And it's going to continue to fall apart. It doesn't matter if it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. At this point, I don't think it's going to be Donald Trump. Either one of them are horrible candidates. I'm just putting that out there. I'm hoping young people are stretching their concept of voting and not just looking at these two political entities, but look at other entities. But more importantly, start getting involved in the local elections, because if we can start doing stuff locally when it comes to the national, because the locals actually is the model for the national become the model for the federal. Because that's what we've seen. We've seen the Federalist Society for the last 40 years who are now trying to put a white ethno model together so they can continue to occupy the places of power in this country. And the other group is not helping to dismantle that. They're only using it to pivot at this point so they can maintain power. I would like to suggest to you guys to find out for yourselves, if you're of the voting age, what are the Democrats going to do? The Republicans have an agenda. You may not like it, but they have an agenda. The independents have agendas. What does the Democrats have? You have to ask yourself that question. Also, looking at Sonia Massey. Sonia Massey is a young woman, another idea or another news story that's been just prop, propaganda been put around this lady's assassination, pretty much like Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Philando Castile, the young man who just died recently, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, uh, um, the young lady Sandra Bland. These are lynchings that are happening to our community, and right now, neither one of these people. Yes, Donald Trump said he would give the man immunity, but he said he'll give all police immunity. Same thing with Kamala Harris. That's why I say I don't understand if people are going to vote for Kamala Harris, I would like to know how they're going to hold her feet to the fire. This is a woman who used a dead woman not only once but twice to get elected to different positions. And then she laughed about putting people in jail in California because their children were truancy. Really? This is the person who is about to be president. But know from history, the power structure don't put people who are plan to change the political structure. They put weak people in positions like Donald Trump and Kamala Harris so they can do the bidding for the money in the shadows. Both of them have shadows. Both of them have all of these rich tech people, billionaires to feed their campaigns. And that's all they're concerned about. If we really want to see leadership, it is imperative that we look at some of the leaders. Che Guevara, we mentioned his name. That young man was a doctor who saw the plight of people in South America, and he became a revolutionary for Cuba. Mind you, that he was from Argentina. But that's what I mean when I say we have to start looking at people who love people. The United States, and I'm just going to plug this in here, United States allowed all of the people who came out of World War II, who killed the Jewish people and put them in concentration camp. They allowed most of them to go over to Argentina. Right now, the United States have the audacity to try to stop the election of the Venezuela government. If you don't understand that, maybe you understand this. The man who won last time won this time. The female who ran against him, she's being backed by Netanyahu and the Zionists. Okay, so you say, now you tell me, or you tell yourself, which one you think actually won and which one you think the United States wanted to win, who didn't win, but now they're trying to make sure this person get in position. And then he asked the second question, how is that any different than what Donald Trump is about to do if he does not win? They're doing the same thing around the globe because this is what white supremacy looks like. They overthrow governments when people want to have autonomy, have independence. We see this in the Sahel. Thomas Sankara, he was the first president of Burkina Faso. And he adopted Che Guevara's motto, which is homeland or death. And that is what Ibrahim Traore has adopted as his motto. A 36-year-old president who he was elected president in 34. In 36, he was going to step down as he told the people he would. And it was the people who said, we want you here and we're going to give you 5 more years. The people did that, not the United States, not France. The people did that. This is the kind of revolutions we need around the world. And we don't have enough people to be behind young people. And when I say be behind young people, meaning to finance them, get them out of jail, make sure they're not harmed by the the slave catchers. Slave catchers just not pale skinned. Slave catchers are in Bangladesh who are killing protesters who are unarmed and they're students. They're killing them on the streets right now. But that's not stopping Bangladesh. Although you may not see it on American TV, Bangladesh just decided they're going to come back in the street after they were trying to, the government tried to silence them. And now they're in three very famous places in Bangladesh. One of them is the steps of one of their science building on the university campus. And are, they're mounting counter protests, in other words, against their government because they want their government change. They want their government to work in the behalf of people. They want their government to stop giving special privileges to the people at the top. That sounds like the same thing that's happening in Kenya. Kenya want their government gone. That's the same thing that's happening in Uganda. Uganda want their government gone. Now, back in 2010, when the idea of the Arab Springs popped up, we didn't see a whole lot of people in America trying to stop them from overthrowing their governments. So you got to ask yourself, why is it in 2010 when Tunisia, young man, young poor guy, was selling uh, his items on the street? That's what kicked off the Arab Spring. Go back and look it up. It was December 17th, 2010. And they embarrassed this young man because he had his cart that he had his goods on was unlicensed. And they just embarrassed him. And he didn't want to be embarrassed no more. He wanted to pay the fine, and they wouldn't even let him pay the fine. So on December 19th, in front of the what you call it, the government, the Capitol, he set himself on fire in protest. That's what started the Arab Spring. And then they started removing a lot of their government when people hit the street. That is about to happen on the continent. People are tired. Young people are tired. And I'm with you. I am so with you. And if that's what you need to hear, then we will continue to try to supply you with the information you need to do what you need to do. Because all of these people that are out there, and I'll get back to some of these people that we talked about, Usha Vance and JD Vance, you have to ask the question, how did JD Vance get to be a millionaire if he came out of if he came out of Ohio, i.e. West Virginia? Because remember, his story is supposed to be about West Virginia. So he's been a political prostitute. And so is Usha, his wife. They switched parties. They used to be Democrat, but I guess they can, make their bones being Republicans. He used to work for Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel started PayPal. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Elon Musk bought Twitter. And he bought Twitter for the same reason Fox Network bought the young man who started Birth of a Nation, Nate Parker. Nate Parker had a movie called Birth of the Nation. Fox Network bought it. They only bought it so they can kill it. I see Elon Musk the same way with the Twitter, X, whatever he calls it now. He bought the platform so he can kill it and so he can use it for propaganda. So that's why I say we need not just boots on the ground. We need a whole infrastructure like General Traore is doing in Burkina Faso, in the Sahel. The Sahel are doing great things. Mali, uh, Niger, Burkina Faso, they're doing things that not being reported unless you have a podcast, that's making the people proud because they're actually working for the people. So we can do this. We can do this around the world. We just have to learn how to know who we supposed to be in life and follow that and stop following half of the people who have $2 and $3 million. I mean, through the subscribers, such as Candace Owens. And I'm gonna bring back to Candace Owens because Candace Owens is a terrible person. Candace Owens talked about the young lady that I just mentioned, Sonia Massey. If you guys don't know about Sonia Massey is the young woman in Illinois who got a bullet to the face by a race soldier. A race soldier, so supposedly a police who get their jollies off on killing black people. And now we're finding out so many different things about this person and how they even came to this woman's house. But to hear Candace Owen try to be so emphatic, as people say, articulating information so pitch perfect, but at the same time, she's a very nasty individual because she seemed to only talk about black people who are brutally murdered by police. And her whole stick is police are humans too. Does she know that? Is she psychic? We can only look at the behavior patterns and we learn to stay away from people like her. But not only stay away from people like her, stay away from people like Amber Rose or even Kanye West. Kanye West went to Mar-a-Lago with a white supremacist. Kanye West wore a shirt, he and Candace on, that's a White Lives Matter. Nobody ever said white lives did matter. But at the same time, that's very dangerous. And what you have to ask yourself, what message are they sending when they do that? Or do they think life is a game simply because they have enough resources that they can do something as careless as continue to advocate toward to a person such as a Donald Trump? Donald Trump is a very hateful person. That's all I need to say about him. If you want to go look at his record, read his niece's book and read his nephew's book. Their parents was Fred Trump. Fred Trump was Donald Trump's oldest brother. Donald Trump has always been a hateful person. And we continue to see him being a hateful person. Hopefully, justice will be served, but it seems like justice does not get served on people who have a lot of money. So we have to do some things different. Yes, the Sahel doing some things, but we have to look at what are we doing in our own areas? What are we doing to understand how propaganda works? What are we doing to address the pulpit pimps? Because they're not addressing our needs. They're not addressing your needs. Hopefully, as we continue to grow and I get more comfortable, I will be able to open a podcast that's devoted to understanding spirituality and the connections between your mental and your emotions. Because that's really what all of these people who talk about being a spiritual leader or a pastor or a clergy or imam are supposed to be doing but have not been doing. They've been leading people around in the circle instead of giving them information to be free. My hope is that I can help you guys develop your inner skills just like you work hard to develop your outer skills. That's what I would like to do with you if you're willing to go on this journey. Because these people who are lying and who continue to lie, They're not going to get any better. J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and some man named Mark Robertson. Mark Robertson is also supposed to be a pastor, but at the same time, he is the lieutenant governor of North Carolina. And that brings us to almost the end of what we're discussing tonight. And we know this week the Olympics happened. But the Olympics also happened in 1936 with Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens was one of the 18 black athletes that went to the 1936 Olympics. Somehow, they have made the entire Olympics about Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens and these 18 other athletes won the awards. But you see how propaganda have us focus on one person instead of the whole collective? But the same way Adolf Hitler treated Jesse Owens is the same way J.D. Vance, Mark Robertson, and Donald Trump and the Republican Party attempted to do with Simone Biles. So why did I put their names there? Because it's important. We're supposed to be celebrating each other, but at the same time, when something does not fit a white supremacy narrative, you see people who supposedly look like us are just as nasty as people who don't look like us. So it has nothing to do with look. It has to do with the heart. And these people are very hard and hate. Their hearts are very hardened and they're hateful. Imagine your 22-year-old self or your 22-year-old child who's going through a mental crisis decide to take care of themselves. And then you have people who excoriate you or your 22-year-old child. And you're still talking about that 4 years later, 3 years later, however many it was when they had the last Olympics. You're still talking about that now. You have to start asking the question, what's wrong with these supposedly adult? And all of these are men. But you're talking about a young female who is at the top of her game and nobody else is going to match what she's done in life. So we got to start asking a lot of questions and looking at a lot of this propaganda that's put out. Uh, of course, we wanted to have time to talk about some of the other information that we brought out. But as you can see, 1 hour give us enough to just put our teeth into it. But there are prostitutes, and most of them are politicians. So just the way you think of a lady on the street selling her body, think of the politicians doing the same thing. And they will lie to make sure they get the money, get the backing, whatever it is. Joe Biden lied to us 4 years ago. Joe Biden said, I got your back. As soon as Joe Biden got in office, he started putting everything on the books for other people and nothing for black people. Kamala Harris has never been the friend of the black community. She has the opportunity to do something different, but people have to demand something from her, or go with the independent, go with Jill Stein, go with one of those other people who are running for president. You don't have to vote for these two people, or you can not vote at all. You have to learn how to make your own decisions on quote unquote this voting thing. Donald Trump and his ilk are trying to erase people from the roads. It's a group of people called ZIKLAG. Look that up. Look under NPR. Look at the interview of the person who actually just put out the report. White supremacy worked hard to destroy melanin. We just want to live. But at this point, we're not going to continue to take the abuse. I commend all young people around the world who are standing up for your human rights, because we have to stand up for ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it. As we can see, doesn't matter if you're in a melanated country or not, we still have to fight for ourselves. The police try to kill us for the elites, whomever they are. We see that across the continent. We see that in Bangladesh. We see it in Europe. We see it in the Americas. The elites do not plan to give up power easily or quickly. So that's something we need to understand and know. They're not going to do it easily. We have to push them. We have to dismantle white supremacy. The elite's not going to do that. That's not. It's not even in their mindset to even think. But that's all I have for this evening. Thank you guys for listening to us. I'm going to give it back to Mr. Chocolate. So, however he want to end the podcast, I bid you guys a good evening.
All right. I hope you took in the information and use it to make decisions in how you see fit. I also want to put out the disclaimer. We are in no way, shape, or form promoting any religious affiliation or political ideology. We are merely putting out information to be used for the betterment of oneself and community. Now, for all questions and comments, please email us at therealchocolatelife@gmail.com. Therealchocolatelife@gmail.com. Please check out The Chocolate Life on multiple streaming platforms: Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Jam, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Castbox, and all other platforms. All right. Just ask that you just please enjoy the rest of your weekend that you have left. Stay vigilant, stay peaceful, and stay aware. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. This is Mr. Chocolate, and this is The Chocolate Life. Till next time, peace out.